Hi everyone, I hope you are well. Welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to do the garden update. So what I'm growing in 2023 and also a few tips on starting your own kitchen garden to help with your budgets. So what I'll do is I think I will start with my tips and then I'll go into what I do. So if you're starting for the first time, I really highly recommend writing a list of all the foods that you like that are possible to grow in the UK. You have to think about your garden and your growing space. Is it in full sun? Are there shady bits? Do you have one of those little pop-up greenhouses or a proper greenhouse or nothing at all? So these are all things to write down so that you can figure out what you are going to be able to grow this year. Another tip is think about how much time you have. If you have a full-time job and loads of kids and lots of busy social plans of a week, you need a garden that is as low maintenance as possible, and that will affect how and where you plant things. I would also think about a water source so that you're not using water from your mains. So if you can get a water butt set up, that is the best thing, hands down. If you're going to buy one piece of equipment, I really recommend getting a water butt, and you can often find them on Free Cycle and places like that for dirt cheap, and they are they're worth their weight in gold. So also when I'm thinking about what I'm going to grow, I think about how to store it. So if it's something that lasts a bit longer, then the sort of order of priority is to be able to store stuff with no intervention whatsoever. So like my squashes, I can just shove under the bed and they last for months and months and months. I'm still eating butternut squash now that I harvested in September. And it costs no money. The next one I like to do is freeze. So I've got an extra freezer that I just keep all my produce in. You can bottle and canning, but I don't do that at all because I don't trust myself not to poison anybody. And also, if you have any spare stuff, see if you can swap it with neighbours for other things, or I do an honesty box out the front. I mean, my neighbours actually ask, when are you going to start doing your honesty box? Because they like to get their fruit and veg from me. And I don't sell it, but if they want to give a donation, then I use that to buy compost. So yeah, in terms of equipment, you don't need whiz-bang lights and heating and all of that stuff. You don't need a greenhouse. People have been growing their own food for thousands of years. So if it's expensive and if it's sort of a new invention, always really think twice about it. Don't get sucked into thinking that you need all the gear. If you've got a watering can, you can even use a bucket or a saucepan. Sometimes I use just an old saucepan for watering. A trowel. You obviously need seeds, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, and some pots. But pots, again, you can pick up from Skips, Free Cycle, anything like that. If you see any pots that are a good size, chuck them in the back of your car and bring them home, because they are they're great to grow in. So the things I am going to grow this year, I will quickly run through a massive list of what works for our family. So I have been doing this for, I've grown food with my father since I was born, basically. But I've had my own vegetable in this town where we live now for 5 or 6 years. So I know what grows really well and I know what we eat. So in terms of what I grow in the greenhouses, I have 2 greenhouses. I grow peppers, tomatoes, aubergines, cucumbers and basil. And chilies. But I also grow the aubergines and the tomatoes outside. So I am right on the south coast. Literally, if you go across the street, you are in the ocean off the south coast. So it is so warm here. I can grow loads of stuff that if you live in Leeds or above, it's going to be sort of a month later that you'll be planting and harvesting things. In terms of what I grow in the ground, I have an asparagus bed, which obviously saves us a fortune because I love asparagus and it's really expensive. So I have asparagus, beans, peas, carrots, new potatoes, spring onions, leeks, sweet corn, courgettes, beetroot, cabbage, purple sprouting, squash and spinach. And I love to grow cut flowers because I also put them in my honesty box and give them as gifts to people. That's dahlias, asters, ranunculus, freesias, zinnias, peonies, sweet peas and gladioli, and a few other bulbs. And in terms of fruit, I grow raspberries, blueberries, apples, pears, melons, strawberries and peaches. So that is a whopping great big list, and I am able to do all of that stuff. And there's rhubarb as well, I forgot about that. That's just a list I got off the top of my head. I can do all of that because I've been collecting seeds and keeping them for years. At the end of each growing season, I buy up really cheap seeds. So if you remember back on this channel, I went to Wilko and bought loads of cheap seeds for, I think they were 10p a packet, 5p a packet. It was crazy prices. So I did all of that. So my real tip is start small. What do you want to grow? I always suggest growing tomatoes. They can be grown outside, both in the ground and in pots. So try and get some tomato seeds. Bush ones and ones that are for pots are super easy as long as you keep them watered. So always have them in a tray if you can, if you can't water them every day. Don't go crazy buying loads of equipment or different loads of seeds. Just stick to a few. The first year is always your learning year. I mean, I learn something new every year anyway, but the first one, you need to know what is good in your garden, what you have time to grow, what you actually eat, how much yield you get off, all of those things. So, you know, if it all goes to poop in the first year, don't worry, try again next year. So in terms of seeds, I save my own seeds as well as buying some. So that's peas. I also go into neighbours' gardens or friends' gardens with their permission and take some flower seeds. So that's a brown tall sunflower. I buy bulbs. And so on the back of your packet, so this is a courgette seed packet from Wilko. So if you're a beginner, you can read the back. So it does say sow indoors from March, but if you fast forward that to planting out, that means you have to plant them out sort of May, June. And if where you live is still brassic cold in May, that's going to be no good if you sow them in March. So always, this is such a generic guide. If you are north of London and Leeds and above, really think about delaying your sowing times as much as possible, because you don't want these beautiful plants and then you put them out and they're wiped out by frost. Okay, so in terms of protecting from frost, you'll see there's all these beautiful fleeces that cost a fortune. You can use straw and newspaper or grass clippings. Okay, so you can keep it really, really cheap that way. So the first thing I will start thinking about sowing is my aubergines. They need a really long growing season. So I will do those, and then I will do my peppers and chilies, and then I'll do my tomatoes. I'm not going to do my tomatoes probably until end of February, but that's because I'm south, and I will start them inside under lights on a heat pad, because then I can transfer them out when it is warm enough. So that's what I'll do. But also, if you do nothing else and you've got an old bucket somewhere, get yourself some seed potatoes. Now, this variety is Charlotte. I love Charlotte new potatoes. And what you do is you wait for these to chit, meaning, I don't know if I can show you through the net, but look, there's little eyes. You've obviously seen it before. You've slung some potatoes in the cupboard or whatever, and they've started shooting. So that's what we want these to do. So I will lay them out in a box. I will start them to chit, and then what I will do is do another video on what I do after that. But this will be one of the first things I do in the next couple of days. I'll start laying them all out, ready to get going. You can get these from Garden Centre or Wilko's. Wilko's is really cheap. There's lots of different varieties. I like to grow mine in pots that are slightly bigger than a bucket, but you can chuck 2 in a bucket, fill it up with soil and forget about it, and then tip it out later in the year and you'll have lovely new potatoes. So I always traditionally plant mine on St. Patrick's Day. It's always been a tradition in my family to do that, because as you know, my mummy is Irish. So I always put my potatoes in their pots on St. Patrick's Day. So that's something to come up as well. There's some fantastic Instagram pages to follow, really hilarious ones and really good ones to follow that will help talk you through the process. So what I'll do is I'll share some of those on my Leaf and Flower stories, and you can follow along there as well. So I'm sorry this has been rushed and a bit all over the place, but that's basically the plan so far. Always ask me questions. You can message me questions or put comments below. I'm really happy to help. I mean, I'm no expert by any means, but and it's every year is different. The weather will be different. The soil will feel different. So it's a learning curve every year, but I'm so thrilled that you'll be joining me. We're going to save a load of money by growing our own food this year. It's a fantastic hobby. And yeah, I'm so glad to have you along for the ride. Get yourself some seed potatoes. That's priority number 1. All right, lots of love. Bye.